I'm very excited to be here today and to speak with a very nice group. And I think thanks Dave for putting me as the first speaker. And I think this, when everybody's mind is still fresh. So today, I want to also appreciate, I also thank you for your kind invitation, and I'm very honored to speak with your faculty members and the students here. So my topic today is called Public Innovation and the Governance, an Ecosystem Perspective. And Dave already introduced me, and I just want to briefly say a little bit about myself again. My name is Wendy Chen, and I'm an associate professor at Texas Tech University, and I focus on technology innovation and focus on public policy and also public administration. So this is my new recent book called Innovation and Entrepreneurship in the Public Sector, which was published last year by the Oxford University. And I have another book that's coming out soon, which is called AI for Better Government. So I think today's talk is gonna be a combination of both books. And I wanna specifically thanks to the Bedrosian Center for offering me and to invite me for this talk, for this symposium. All right, I see some of you are eating. So what comes to your mind when you think about innovation? Just only think about the word innovation. Yes?
Innovative.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I think of new thoughts.
New thoughts? And I see somebody using Apple here. And I see some people on their phones. So will you call those our innovation? When I interviewed people, when I conducted surveys with people, and I say, what are the things come to your mind first when you think about innovation? And then people give me lists. They start to think about a lot of times for people who live in more rural areas, they told me the first thing that comes to their mind is Amazon, because Amazon is helping them to get goods a lot easier than before. And then when I ask like younger people, and I ask them, what does that come to your mind? And they told me DoorDash, because this is how they get food. And other people who are using their computers, and they told me definitely would be Apple. So these are the things that we often see, which is Apple, Amazon, or Google. What do they have all in common? They are all talking about the private sector. And we are in the public policy school. So we care about government. So where's government in innovation? Why does public innovation matter? If you think for a second to yourself, a global survey reveals that citizens consistently value and desire more innovative solutions from their governments. So think about, will you be proud if you know your city or your neighborhood has been rated as they are the most innovative city or most innovative community? Like, you would definitely be proud. And especially when we are using all the commercial goods or commercial tools, then residents increasingly expect consumer-grade services. And communities are changing faster than institutions. But according to a global survey, only 8% of public agencies were identified as trailblazers in government innovation. Then this really made me think, what are some barriers to innovation? And I think the first thing probably everybody can agree with is government probably is more risk averse than the private sector. And also government has more bureaucracy So therefore, the process might be more inefficient. And another thing is, a lot of times, many departments are involved. But sometimes departments are doing their own things. So they have siloed departments. And of course, they have political pressure. But from my research, I will really highlight two things what I have identified. What have slowed government's innovation, slow them down? The first is resistance to the innovation culture. And the second thing, which is also what Bedrosian Center also cares about, which is the lack of governance. So, for example, I can give you some quotes from my research. So some of government officials will say, we have always done things this way. So why should we change? Change has more things, it needs courage and more things to do. And they will say, we already have a lot on our agenda. So when do we have time to innovate? Third, my city is too old to innovate. And another thing recently, when I interview government officials, who they always tell me is, AI is coming so fast. And honestly, our governance structures haven't caught up. We haven't even put together a committee yet to make AI policies. And many times we still don't really have a clue of how to put a committee together to make AI policies. And who should be involved? And what type of AI policies are we supposed to consider? Then this led me to ask the next question, which is, can the public sector innovate? Because we talked a lot about how easy it is for the private sector to innovate, seems like. And then it's very efficient for the private sector to innovate. And we have enjoyed lots of good consumer goods from those companies. So can the public sector innovate? Anybody knows where this picture is? So where is this place? You're in California. So who said Yosemite? Okay, so you got a point now. Yes, so this is Yosemite. And so I think you guys should be proud of. And so what is the history of national parks? Was national parks started by Amazon? National parks started by a private entity? It was actually the government's idea. So this was actually public innovation. So many of you probably have already traveled to some national parks, probably have taken lots of pictures. So these are the things that government has done. And probably people haven't linked these things like a national park and public innovation together yet. So this is what I try to emphasize in my book, which is we have lots of myths about public innovation. We assume public innovation equals to new technology developed or adopted by governments. Or we probably think public innovation means big, flashy projects that you see on the news. Or public innovation means new pilot programs. Maybe like in LA, they are going to have a new metro coming in. Or they are going to expand their airport. Or public innovation just means government spending money. So these are often the myths you will find in the literature that defines public innovation. But I will say public innovation, they're not just limited to technology. They are not just limited to have to be like, oh, you spend $1 billion on it. all these big projects. Instead, there are other types of innovation that I suggest the government to explore. So first will be service innovation. Governments, they provide services, right? So service innovation. What are some new ways of delivering or bundling services? So for example, in Helsinki, Finland, public services are organized around life events, like having a child or starting a business. So the government think this is time when people are getting together. So when people are getting together, this is time the government can really tell them what type of updates governments are doing, or they can interview them. What type of services you think you need from the public sector. And process innovation. So like permits, workflows, digital forms, and automation. And so for example, local governments in Estonia, residents can register businesses, access records, and sign documents within minutes, not weeks. So we have already been used to like doing things. If we go on a private company website, we can probably easily set up an account, and we can probably already do some purchases and then get your meals. But in public services, a lot of times those things can take a long time. And also partnership innovation, working differently with businesses or nonprofits or civic tech. So in Amsterdam, they work with businesses and researchers on housing and energy challenges using shared data platforms so that everybody is on the same page and everybody can share data at the same time. And democratic participation innovation. So there's new ways to engage residents. So for example, some governments have already done different participatory budgeting projects. And ask yourself, how many times if you have pets, if you have dogs, and you're walking your dogs, or you take your dogs to dog parks, how many times have you run into government officials? No. How many times have you been approached, say, all right, we are all having dogs together, and maybe now it's a moment to tell us what are the things you need from us, and what are the things we need to improve. So these could also be, those are the methods that the public sector can be innovative in terms of engaging their residents. Now I have talked a lot about public innovation. I demystified what public innovation is supposed to be, and I told you public government actually can innovate. And I give you examples of, what are the areas that the government actually have innovated. But now I want to welcome you to think, is public innovation always a good thing? Do you want your public agencies to innovate? So from my research, I found that a lot of times government interests, they're not the same as public interest. So the foundation of democracy rests on a simple relationship between the government and the governed. But many times when governments trying to have a project, and then their interest and the public interest may not necessarily align. And also picking winners and losers. So whenever, especially when governments say like they are doing cross-sector collaborations. So some organizations may win, so they may win some bids, but other than the communities, they may lose. So these are the things that there should be a balance. Also similarly, there could be unintended consequences. So a lot of times, governments may have a good intent, but the results, the consequences, they may have some additional consequences they have never thought about. So this is a time when public innovation needs governance. Why does public innovation needs governance? First is governance provides accountability. Governance ensures innovators are responsible for outcomes, not just intentions. Then also actually governance also helps with scalability. So a pilot that works in one neighborhood needs institutional backing to scale, then governance provides the legal, financial, and administrative infrastructure to expand that impact. So they may play that role too. And also governance controls risk management because, as I mentioned, public innovation can have unintended consequences. And the governance provides oversight, evaluation, and the ability to course correct before harm spreads. Then public funds also are finite. We just all probably filed our tax a couple days ago. And we know the government funds are finite, and then how to allocate resource, especially public resource, is always a tricky question. Then governance determines which innovations get funded, prioritized, and sustained to prevent waste. So here, I want to propose a public innovation in the governance ecosystem. Everybody is familiar with the Silicon Valley, and anybody knows why Silicon Valley became successful. So because Silicon Valley had a healthy ecosystem. So here, first we have capital, human capital. So we know we need talent. And then next, we need to build an entrepreneurial culture that as leaders, you do not let your people working in your departments to just be content. Earlier, remember, I gave you quotes from my interviews. People would say, we've always do things this way. And it is too hard to innovate. So we should just forget about innovation. So this is where I talk about we need to have an entrepreneurial culture. And then cross-sector collaboration, which is government, you are not doing things alone. So there are other entities and organizations may have more expertise that you're supposed to collaborate with. So not only just the businesses or nonprofits. As I mentioned earlier, governments are supposed to collaborate more with citizens as well. And next is how to provide supporting resources, as I talked before, which is how you use governance to decide who gets resource and how much, to what extent. And the next is public policy. This is where governance comes in. As I mentioned earlier, many local governments still do not have AI policies. And this policy, we already know it's really needed. So public policy is another thing I think is very important. In the Silicon Valley, what makes Silicon Valley successful was also because they had really healthy public policy. Then management and leadership is another one, especially from middle management. So here I want to use AI innovation and governance as a case study. As I mentioned, I have a forthcoming book, which is called AI for Better Government. So we know AI boom has advanced quickly in recent years, and with generative AI achieving particularly notable progress. It has permeated to many parts of the world, from work to our personal lives. If you're students here, probably your professors are not very encouraging you to use AI for assignments. But in the meantime, I bet probably all of you have already tried some sort of generative AI, and at least to try to find out if they are helpful or not. And Governments also use AI in predictive policing, immigration decisions, and resource allocation. And AI policies are fragmented and slow, as I mentioned earlier, and AI innovation is outpacing governance. Indeed, this is from a 2023 survey. Globally, many countries, especially in the West, people found AI makes them nervous. And more recently, public concern about weak AI governance has become stronger. 82% of people, these are the surveys from Pew Foundation and the Brookings, and 82% of people found they cannot trust the tech executives to self-regulate AI. 71% disagree that AI regulation is not needed. 68% found little or no confidence in government's ability to regulate AI effectively. And 62% are lacking confidence in government to regulate AI effectively. And 60% say government is doing too little to regulate AI. 59% said lack confidence in companies to develop and use AI responsibly. And 58% say they're concerned that government will not go far enough. So what are some major concerns of AI? These include data inaccuracy, cybersecurity, intellectual property infringements, regulatory compliance, individual privacy, workplace displacement, equity, fairness, and national security. So these are the main kind of points where people have the most concerns of AI. And we know AI systems evolve faster than regulatory frameworks. So now there's a gap in oversight and accountability. But in the meantime, governments also know AI presents major economic opportunities for countries. And countries who do not take proactive measures, they will risk losing technological superiority in defense, cybersecurity, and in intelligence. So AI governance needed to balance innovation with responsible development. So in my research, I looked at all the policies from around the world, and I tried to score them based on their keywords. And here we will see the global AI policy landscape, which is some countries are more oriented to innovation, focus more on innovation. Some countries are more governance oriented. So in America and some countries in East Asia, they're more likely to oriented or focus on innovation, while the rest of the world are more likely to focus on governance. So I would say there is also an AI innovation and governance ecosystem. So here we have a regulatory framework, and we have AI investment for R&D, and still we have we need leadership there, and then AI talent education. So we need to have data governance, also ethical considerations, and international collaboration. So government can innovate, I would say. We already saw in the past, government had innovated before. And the barriers from my research, they're not other things, not technical, but culture. And the leaders can create conditions where innovation can thrive. And we need practical policy frameworks more than slogans. So as we get till the end of this talk, and I want to leave you with this graph. Everybody probably has heard of yin-yang, and it is an ancient Chinese philosophy originated in the BC time. When the agrarian society, people noticed why there are day and a night, why there's cold and warm. And so they found they have to work around it. And so this is what I say about innovation and governance too. they go hand in hand, and they're interdependent and constantly changing. This is another important thing. So why don't I just have a circle here? I could have just drawn a circle with innovation and governance, and I could just have a straight line in the middle. So now it will be like 50%, it will suggest 50% of innovation, 50% of governance. But I want to emphasize here is the change is constant. And we need iterative and adaptive policymaking. And we need a constant learning. And the governance itself need to be innovative. So innovation helps bridge the gap between capacity and the demand. And innovation is a leadership responsibility. Innovation needs governance. Although I have said a lot about what the government has not done and what they are supposed to be doing, I think the good news here is we are in a good time that's opportunities in public sector and the governance and the innovation and governance is a great opportunity for them, which is first, we have changing demographics. And we have new technology such as AI, blockchain, and other emerging technologies. And then the key is to build a supportive and a responsible entrepreneurial ecosystem within the public sector. So I hope my talk can leave you some lessons and at least allow you to give you some inspiration to start thinking about these topics. So thank you to Dave and thank you to the Dean for your kind invitation.
Okay, so first big question was like, we see the different types of innovation governance that occurs. You know, for instance, the different kinds include service, process, and others. Do we have any empirical evidence on which of these has proven more effective across sectors? Do we see, for instance, that service-based innovations tend to be more successful, tend to have greater return on investment, and so forth? So I'd just like to hear about what we know scientifically, empirically about which kinds of innovative governance work best. Okay, second thing is that we talked about that, you know, AI and innovation could move much faster than the government. And I was thinking about one of the reasons you mentioned that government is not innovative is that it's risk averse, right? Government tends to be really risk averse. And I thought, well, but shouldn't government be risk averse? Don't we desperately need government to be risk averse? I wondered, for instance, like imagine like the government could populate your tax forms for you and you could just click send. Wouldn't that be great? Especially around April 15th. But if there's errors and you've got all kinds of problems and AI is not responding and is getting things wrong, what a disaster if people don't get their tax returns or worse, their Social Security payments or various kinds of programs that protect people. So I worry about AI being used a little bit cavalierly, and then we get away from the risk aversion we often want government to have. So that's the second question. Third point would be that, Neil Fligstein wrote this book many years ago where he said, you may normatively prefer a free market. You might just like free market capitalism. That's your cup of tea. But he said the reality is there's never been a free market, that every single private firm has had some government involvement in it, some government investment in it. And so I was looking at your ecosystem perspective and I was like, is it reasonable to say still that every single private firm is swimming in, embedded in, shaped by heavy government involvement, even if it's just the human capital training of a public school system? And so that would be the question is like, in some ways, doesn't your study of innovation reveal to us how there's no such thing, whether you normatively prefer a free market or not, the reality is government's always in play with these private sector firms. So I'll let you decide if you want to respond to those questions or if we should go to the audience, and go ahead. And then I'll field questions for you during the discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Dave, for these very wonderful questions. And I think the first question he asked is, you may remember I mentioned there are different types of public innovation, not limited to technology. And then he was asking, so if some innovation regarding service, and then some maybe like government can speed up service, and some innovation maybe regarding like community engagement. So we have different types of innovation approaches. So empirically, I will say, so whenever let's define empirically too. And empirically could be big data. And so what type of big data or like what type of qualitative studies have been done regarding these approaches? First, not that many people have identified that public innovation can also include these types of orientation. So it's one of the main contributions in my book. So, and then now because most times we treat public innovation more vaguely. And I wanted to be more specific, especially the goal is here why I wrote a book is trying to help government leaders to really give them kind of a direction, general approaches that they can take. And from my research, and I think service innovation does have a really more successful effect from citizens' perspective, because they directly benefit from services. But another thing I found is community engagement, which is when people feel they go to Starbucks and then, some city leaders actually were talking to them. And then they're not talking to them about, I'm running for office now, so you gotta vote for me. Then this is time they talk to them. Rather is after they are already got into the office and they want to learn directly from their citizens what they need and how they can help. So these are the things that also, if we try to define successful, these are also the things that citizens would directly benefit from, like, now you have somebody from who's government leader who directly talk to me. They care about us. So psychologically, you will feel this is successful. And the second question is, AI, should government be risk averse? So here, this is exactly what I was talking about, is why we need governance, why we need responsible AI. So we already showed you data of how many people, 80% people are worried that if AI just totally in the hands of private companies. So they need the government. So governance is definitely needed to guide their development, and then especially guides how they use it. So risk averse and governance, they are not contradictory to each other. And risk averse is not, for many times what I found is risk averse, people use it as an excuse. So, okay, government is known to be risk averse. So therefore, we just stop doing anything new. We just stop trying to really develop. And then, but responsible governance, on the other hand, is you think the innovation is important, but you also want to take care of your citizens. You want to make sure your citizens' privacy is maintained, is protected. So therefore, this is when governance will come in. And so this is, I think, these are the balance. This is what I showed in the yin-yang graph, why they are needed.
Yeah, I mean, super interesting. And it got me thinking what you said. I kind of echo the idea of should the government be innovative in that sense? Because in a way, when you brought up the Amazon comparison, it got me thinking, well, the objective function is very different of the government, right? It's not about being efficient and maximizing profits. It's about, for example, the postal service doesn't care about delivering things super fast necessarily, but about reach, making sure that everybody has access to that basic infrastructure, right? So in your view, given your research, I wonder, isn't the big issue the misperception of the public in terms of, what the government should be doing or what the government is doing? Because it sounds like it's a blind spot. They're not thinking about innovation as being a lot that the government is already doing, but also they just don't, they're not making a fair comparison in a way, right? They're comparing Amazon with the postal service, and maybe they shouldn't.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether, how you thought about it.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. So I would say it's not about comparison. It's not like, so citizens, so to your point, citizens can easily think, you say like, oh, what Amazon can do and then what post office can do. But I think the key thing here, what I try to emphasize is government cannot just use it as an excuse. So government cannot just say, we're government. We can never compete with Amazon. I want to give you a real story. So one time, a student was asked to, there are 2 city leaders. And one city is really upcoming. So more and more people are moving to that city. And the other city is stagnant. Then one student just asked a very simple question, like after their talks. So one student said, so what's your plan in the next 5 years? So it's a very simple question, very generic question, like in your cities. So the first city that's upcoming city, so this city government leaders was saying, oh, this city actually already have lots of things planned out. And they are currently working with this organization, that organization. So in the next few years, don't even need 5 years. The city already gonna make more changes. You're gonna already see more differences. And the other city that's stagnant, guess what does that leader say? That leader said, I already get up at 7:30. What do you want me to do? So I think many of you probably get up earlier than 7:30. And so this is what I try to emphasize in the book, which is it's not too much about public perception, rather is from the government perspective. So some people, I want them to know that innovation is needed. I use historical examples to show government has innovated before. So it's not like governments have never done anything. And I just want governments I want to encourage them and I want to give them more tools. So not only just you need to do technological innovation, and you can do more innovation in other ways. And then another thing I wanted them to know is they have a role here, a very important role, which is governance. So they have a role here trying to guide, and then they're responsible for public funds. So they are supposed to use how to work with different sectors to use public funds more responsibly and trying to contribute to larger pictures of innovation.
Okay, Ben?
Thank you, Wendy, for your interesting talk. I agree with Guo's point here about kind of like the should question. I see government as this place where we protect public values and where we act accountably in the public interest, and we build in redundancy so that safeguards don't fail. And I do have concerns about this idea of entrepreneurial government culture. So I was doing a research project a couple of years ago, and I called some folks here in LA actually, and it was like I was talking to a tech startup inside the government. They were doing some micro mobility solutions around the city, really interesting stuff, but just the feel to me felt very, very private sector. So you're offering up governance as a solution for this, and I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about the specifics. When I think about governance, of course, I think about kind of like regulation, but also the administrative side. And particularly in the spaces that you're talking about, I worry the government isn't very well informed, maybe even not informed enough to do a good job regulating. And we're seeing the hollowing out of bureaucracies around the country, so that kind of administrative side where you'd see the expertise is missing. So how can we solve or promote innovation, responsible innovation, through these governance solutions that you're talking about?
Yeah, thank you. So this is, I would say, a very important question, which is how to promote innovation while have responsible governance. And I would say first is governments need to understand innovation. From my research, as I mentioned, many governments still do not have appropriate AI policies. And they don't even have like a committees put together yet. So a lot of times what I found is governments, they're not like AI experts. So they don't really feel comfortable about setting up policies. So this is another thing. So this is when I talked about we need to have more different human capital and how you're going to discover human capital in your organizations. So a lot of times, government leaders, we are not requiring them to know everything, but they first, an entrepreneurial leader, in my perspective, is they also understand how to discover talents within their organizations. So a lot of times, they have talents in their organizations, but those talents were misplaced. And they're not used. So for example, you are interested in technology. You have a passion for technology and the AI say, but you are placed as you are in a HR role. So these are the misplaced kind of positions that sometimes we see organizations often do. And the next is if you are not good at if you don't have the talent, then it will be good for you to have cross-sector collaborations. So for example, I know some cities collaborate with universities, and they know universities have the talent that they need and they have the expertise that they can consult from. So this is the innovation part. And the next is how to govern responsibly is after you collect all the information, from the expertise, and then this is the time you can start discussing like how to govern after you have the knowledge. And then you discuss how to govern more effectively. And how to govern more responsibly is you are going to, when I was doing my research, I also, to Dave's point, I actually did empirical research, which is having governments doing they asked them to collect internal and external surveys. So I give them experiments is if you have practiced trying to collect internal and external surveys about this specific innovation project, and then you are more likely to have a holistic idea of what this whole thing is and what this AI is, what's everything it's gonna involve, and then which stakeholders we need to pay attention to, and which are the areas that we need to address. So these are the experiments in my research, and I found that if governments have done this kind of experiments, they are more likely to be able to have the knowledge to responsibly innovate.
Okay, so we have 4 people in the queue, and I'm going to abuse my poor faculty. They have to go to the back seat. I'm going to let the students ask questions first. Sorry, guys, that's how it goes. So I've got Tencha, I've got Mike, and Allison. Why don't we collect all 3 questions? You answer 2 of them, okay? You pick. Tencha's first, Michael, and then Allison.
Hi.
Sorry, guys.
So as you're talking, I'm thinking about that part where you said, we've always done it this way. So in my brain, I'm thinking about, so I'm a member of the Navajo Nation. So I'm thinking about tribal government, and my tribe is exactly that way. They're scared of innovation, don't want to do things as other tribes do. So my question is, how do we overcome that?
Mm-hmm.
Michael?
Thank you for speaking. Really appreciate it. Greatly enjoyed your presentation there. I really got caught my eye where you said that there were cultural hurdles and technical hurdles that often get conflated. And I was curious if you think that funding shortages or lacking of ways to raise funds for these programs are where cultural barriers and technical barriers meet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Allison.
Great speech. I was hoping that you could elaborate more on, there was this one slide, like, I think around the middle, where you talked about in Helsinki, like, they have local government programs and like initiatives around like life events, you said. I was wondering if you could elaborate more on that, because I was kind of interested in what that meant, and also how, if we could replicate any of that in America, like what would that look like here?
Okay, two of those responses. You can respond to two of them.
Okay, thank you. I would say USC students are great, and I would say you have asked very great questions and really impressive. And I'll start from the last one, since I remember that the most, and which is so yes, for the Helsinki is what they do is a lot of times government services actually exist, but people don't know about it. And so this is another thing. Then government feel, okay, we created these services, but people are not using. So therefore, we should cut it. But the problem is, a lot of times people are not even aware. Just like maybe university has lots of policies. How many of you are really aware of each individual policy? So this is the same thing for the country, for the world too. So therefore, for them, what they do is, okay, during life events, this is when people gather. So when people gather, then they have different booths to show this is each individual service. So it's more like an educating. So tell people, oh, we actually have this service if you need to use this, and this is how we do permit, and this is how the other ways we're doing things. So these are the things like this, like a gathering. And then they look for places, times when people are more likely to be kind of concentrate and gather together. And then they found it most effective for them to share what they have. So people, and then share what questions, and then answer questions what people may have.
So it's like if a bunch of new parents just had a new kid, and then they go to daycare, and then that's like a gathering place. Is that what you mean?
So like when people have, like, say, when people have weddings, and then when people have, and then all these times, then when people gather, then these are the things like when government can show up. I feel bad to only answer two questions out of three, but I think they kind of overlap a little bit, which is about risk averse, and then cultural, and then when technology, and also no funding, all these things. And I think this is why I wrote this book, is trying to tell government so for the tribal example, which is, you don't need to start big. You don't need to start having like a flashy project. And actually it's a myth. You only need to start very small step. So as I mentioned earlier, have you looked into your like employees and how to even motivate more people to work for your organization? And if you have a new way to do that, it's already innovation. It's already supposed to be encouraged, and it's already people supposed to really, so government's already supposed to get applauses.